incest aversion is a natural thing because having offspring with your relatives has a higher chance of genetic defects happening and the offspring dying or having some kind of illness or disability, right? So through natural selection, which is a process where nature selects characteristics and behaviors that benefit the spreading of our genes, right? Meant that we developed an aversion to being with relatives in a romantic way, right? And he was saying that he thinks that's because the brain developed some kind of way of recognizing someone you've been brought up with as a child, someone you were very similar to and familiar with. That was so if there was an inkling that they were a relative, the brain would then switch in a different mode and be like, "There's no sexual desire there. They're just like a family member." And his argument, it was a small little subsection, a couple of lines. He was like, "This could be why people get friend zoned because the brain maybe starts to believe that they're more of a brotherly or sisterly figure in your life rather than a romantic partner, and then create that, the classic thing of just like, oh, I really love you, but not in that way." Do you know what I mean? And that way, meaning like the sexual desire way, is limited because of like the relationship you have with that person is too familiar, and now it's something the brain doesn't want because of this natural incest aversion that we have. I mean, I know I'm sort of saying that out of context in the first few minutes of the episode, but
make unfamiliar the relationship.
It's almost like if someone becomes like a brother or sister to you, you're not going to have that like romantic spark, are you?
That's why mystery is important.
Yeah.
So if there's anyone watching that's sort of in a friend zone sort of situation, you need to be more unfamiliar. That's why you use absence to increase respect.
I'd also just read the book. So I'm talking about, we haven't said because we literally just started recording and we were talking off air, but it's called The Ape That Discovered the Universe by Steve Stuart Williams. Brilliant book on evolutionary psychology. I'm about 120 pages into it. I've been reading over the past 3 or 4 days. Very interesting. But yeah, here we are, Jacob, back again.
Yeah.
I've got 1 or 2 points for today, mainly just based on what I've been reading. But yeah, do you want me to take the floor or do you want to
go? If it's linked, you can go. Yeah, maybe you start and say your bit first because my bit's kind of a different sort of direction.
Okay. So again, today for me is probably going to be very evolutionary psychology themed because that's what I've been reading about and thinking about the past few days. But this one idea is something that after I've read it, it sort of hasn't left my mind. And I want to sort of use you as a guinea pig, Jacob, and see, can I explain this well enough that you understand it? So it's this idea of an evolutionary mismatch, okay? Which, if I attempted to define it, is where a characteristic or behavior that we as humans developed due to natural selection thousands of years ago in our hunter-gatherer ancestral past is now maladaptive due to the way our world is now. Our genes and our biology operates based on mechanisms and systems that were useful when we were hunter-gatherers. But when those same characteristics and behaviors persist in today's world, in our behavior, in our mannerisms, and the things we do, it's actually not good for us. And that's why it's called a mismatch. Something that was good for us in our ancestral past, but is not good for us now because of the way our world is. So an example, the prime example is why we eat food that gives us diseases. You think about Eddie Abu's viral clips about how people just eat sugary shit that gives you diabetes and heart disease, and we know that it's bad for us. I do the same thing. I drink like fruit juices and I enjoy a KFC from time to time. I know that's bad for me, but I desire it, and at certain times I indulge those desires, right? Well, basically, it's an evolutionary mismatch because back in our hunter-gatherer ancestral past, if there was any food that was rich in calories, rich in sugar, rich in salt, rich in fat, we would eat as much of it as we possibly could because those food sources were so scarce in those times. So we have an inbuilt hunger drive mechanism that when we see fatty, saturated, salty, sweet foods, we try and eat as much as we possibly can. And it's an evolutionary mismatch because that behavior back then was positive, but today that's what leads to obesity and heart disease and high blood pressure and all of those physical problems that so many people suffer with. Another example of a evolutionary mismatch was ADHD in children. Okay, the author broke it down in saying children developed a natural drive to play, and play is one of the fundamental states in the developmental process that teaches you how to be a person in the world. So boys specifically are more inclined than girls. I mean, girls will also do this too, but boys are more inclined for what's called rough and tumble play, or what we call in our society is play fighting. Right? That's essential for a male, or anyone for that matter, to regulate their aggression, because we have an aggressive drive. But when you're play fighting as a kid, maybe you push the line a bit far, you get a bit hurt, you hurt someone else, it doesn't feel good. You learn where the line is. You learn how assertive you can be in a situation without hurting the other person. You learn how to control your aggression and turn it into something fun. A big example that is more on the feminine side, but also boys do this too, is like a sort of parental / care, bit of role play, right? Where young girls will look after like a doll. It's a classic example, right? Play is essential for us to develop as an individual in the world. And that was a great characteristic when we were educated through playing in the world, right? Through being a young boy and watching what your parents do and trying to be helpful and playing and rough play with the other boys in the tribe, or girls watching what their mother's done and caring for animals or younger siblings or whatever, right? Yeah, those characteristics and that drive for play were useful back then. But today, the way we're educated is you sit in a chair at a desk, you shut up and you listen, right? There's an evolutionary mismatch there. And this drive for play that can't be satisfied through having to sit in a chair at a desk and shut up and listen to a teacher is arguably why we see symptoms like ADHD. That is hugely prevalent in young boys. And what the guy argued in the book was, when we see, he spoke about it in the context of young males, see young males being disruptive in class, wanting to play all the time. And we view that as their brain is wonky. They should be given drugs to help their concentration. And he said, well, no, they're just following their natural drive. And that's not their brain being wonky. That's the weird way that we educate people in comparison to the way our biology is supposed to be. So there's other examples, but it's this idea that a lot of what we do in today's world, and also a lot of things that go wrong with our behavior, are because of patterns of thinking and psychological and physiological drives that developed as a result of natural selection and our ancestral past. And it's been a bit of a truth bomb to hit me, but yeah, what are your thoughts? Ask any questions.
So we're trying to kind of suppress those drives now. Like, so from the food bit, so it was a scarcity, now it's an abundance. I mean, I'd rather be in abundance, to be honest. It's probably the better place to be. But there's no kind of, it doesn't have its value anymore, food, does it? It's you don't go and hunt it.
No, I mean, this is one thing that's said in the book, is more people globally die today from eating too much food than eating too little food.
That's ridiculous.
It's a scary idea though, isn't it?